Greetings from the 2019 Acres USA Convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Right now we're lucky enough to have Lauren Muller with us from the great north of Canada. Can you tell us exactly where you're from in Canada, Lauren?
We're from Minitonas, Manitoba.
What's the population of Minitonas?
Not enough.
Okay.
Approximately 500.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, we're in the Swan River Valley of Manitoba, northern area of the farming district of Manitoba. So
You guys don't get a whole lot of time to grow a crop up there.
we do well. I think what benefits us a little more is daylight hours.
Ah.
We don't get enough nighttime in the summertime to catch up on our sleep.
You're not that far north. Well, now you've been farming for a couple weeks now.
Okay.
Did you start farming right out of high school?
Right out of high school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd been
Okay.
farming together with Dad prior to that,
Okay.
but on my own since I was 18. Yeah.
Wow. What crops do you currently grow?
Predominantly, it's been cereals like wheat, barley, still growing a lot of oats, canola, doing some flax, some peas. Soybeans is a new one for us, and we're probably on the northern edge of where we should be growing soybeans, but we've been doing it pretty successfully.
Successfully?
So,
Yeah. You've gotten into some of the traditional ancient grains.
done a little bit with that. Yes, we were given the opportunity to grow some einkorn, and knew absolutely nothing about it. So
Welcome to farming.
Well, it was a new experience, but yeah, it was pretty interesting. Just learning about einkorn is one of the original ancient wheats, and when you think to what they grew it like 1,000 years ago or a couple thousand years ago, and what we're trying to do with it now in relation to what we're currently growing, it's a neat thought process.
So in the eyes of the ancient grain, did you get an oxen and a wooden plow?
No. No.
You used the big equipment.
We did.
Okay.
We did. Yeah.
How did that grow for you, the einkorn?
It was good. Everything that we did was a learning experience. So there was things that we learned that we should do, things that we shouldn't do, crops that we should not follow it with, and so on and so forth. But overall, yeah, it was a very good experience. Marketing, on the other side, is slow.
Yeah. Now the einkorn has to go to a processor, get dehulled before it can actually be milled.
Yes.
Did the processor that dehulled it notice anything different about your grain?
Very, very happy. Very thankful for what he was seeing as far as quality goes. Nice big plump kernels. Not as plump as wheat varieties, but for an einkorn, really nice. Commented that we really had something there that we should follow up and keep going with. So.
Well, and to go one step further, the actual miller that grinds the einkorn that you send it to is also very happy.
Very, very much. Yeah, we've been through. One of the first ones was a gentleman from Pennsylvania, and the old stone grinding, providing flour to some of them, and he's very, very happy with it. And then we're dealing with local bakeries and so on and so forth that are just learning how to deal with stuff like that. So
when you sell einkorn, it isn't a bushel or a bag; it's usually a semi.
we'd like to think so, but it's many times just a few pounds at a time.
Okay, so it isn't just semis lined up, loading up.
No.
Okay.
We'd like to get to that point, but
Yeah.
it's going to take a while to get there.
As you have grown different crops in your, can I say, challenging environment of Canada?
Okay.
Interesting?
Not dull.
Of the years that you have farmed, what have you noticed that has worked as far as helping with your ground, making a better crop?
One of the things that we've noticed in the almost 40 years, and was there was a deterioration of soil. It was, and I guess, part of me really didn't quite understand that. We were seeing, the soil get tougher to work with. When we looked at the technology and so on, we were seeing, the manufacturers creating drills that had to penetrate and so on and so forth. That was just normal. The thought process hadn't changed. And, just the concept of if this keeps going, we're on a slippery slope.
So you were doing, and you're not an organic farmer.
No, we're conventional.
And would you consider yourself sustainable, regenerative, healthy? Do you have a term for describing your farming style?
No, we are a little bit of everything. We are conventional, we are non-conventional, we are using some organic principles, we are aiming towards regenerative type results in the soil. I don't consider myself any one or the other.
You have a lot of hats you put on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Now there's some changes that are going to be happening here in your life.
Yes. After almost 4 decades, we are retiring from the farm, and our kids decided they weren't going to take over the farm, and so we've called it an experience. But we're also moving into this new part where I've been working for the last 10 years part-time. Now I'm going to be working full-time. So.
Now, what's this part-time job you've been doing?
Part-time, full-time, yeah. Working with a company called Back to Your Roots Soil Solutions. And ran into this company back in, I guess it would be fall of 2007, 2008. And we're just looking at, this concept of the soil deteriorating. And I remember sitting one day and saying, something's got to change. Plant residues were not decomposing. 3 and 4 years later, we were still finding them in the soil. And so just literally said, we got to change, but really had no idea what we were looking for. Through a bunch of searching and, talking to various individuals, we ran into this company and just, it started out as theory. But when we seen the theory turn into reality, that's when it got exciting. And so we've just been given the opportunity to work alongside them. And that's where my passion is now turned to because of what I'm seeing on my own farm. We need to get that message out to others.
So when you say your soil was deteriorating, other than the residues not breaking down, what else? And you were doing the conventional program that everybody else was doing that you see advertised, and you saw that you weren't impressed with how things were going.
We were seeing compaction. We were seeing, very little things like oxygen in the soil. Our aerobic zone was very, very shallow. Water penetration wasn't great, and we just had to do something. So, we've seen those results now with the program that we've been using. We've seen where we can have 140, 150 bushel oat crop, or the residue from 140, 150 bushel oat crop, that's virtually deteriorated by July of next year.
In Canada,
yeah,
where you don't get a lot of elongated warm spells.
Well, we've got a crop of snow in between all the time.
So you are double cropping sometimes?
Sure.
So back to Your Roots Soil Solutions. What is the first thing that you guys examine or look at when you're looking at, let's say, a problem field?
We need to look at soil characteristics. One of the first things we want to see is what's the aerobic zone like. Without oxygen in the soil, really nothing else works the way it's supposed to be working. And so farming becomes very, very difficult. Inputs become very, very expensive. The problems that we react to become very, very severe. And so if we don't have the oxygen, we're heading the wrong direction in this whole equation. So that's one of the first things we look at. We look at, what are the crops like that we're growing? We look at the root systems. There's a lot of producers that have paid no attention to the roots underneath the plant. But we take a lot of look at, or pay a lot of attention to those kinds of things. So.
Now, when you say aerobic zone, in a lot of different people's eyes, that's kind of a moving target or an ambiguous answer or zone. How do you establish what the true aerobic zone is?
We can use things like a penetrometer. I like using a shovel, just a physical, everybody's got one in the back of their pickup type thing.
Old school. Talk
yeah.
about that.
But just taking a look at the characteristics where you see what the soil is like in the top and then you see what the soil is like underneath. Silly things like smelling it, taking a look at the different smells between aerobic and anaerobic.
Why would you smell soil?
Because we're silly. It tells us something. Everything that we do can tell us something about the soil.
What should soil smell like?
That nice earthy smell. We've grown up with that smell locked in our brain someplace, and it's just gone away. And so some of the things that, you go back and you unlock that portion and say, oh yeah, okay, I remember as a kid how this smelled like. Versus, either a zero smell or a very musty, moldy type smell.
Now, if you get a musty, moldy, bitter, sour smell of the soil, what does that mean?
It's anaerobic. There's no oxygen in that, and the biology is not working the way it's supposed to. They cannot survive in that type of soil.
So you're saying the biology in the soil would like to have some air?
It requires it. It's mandatory.
What happens if the air isn't there?
Your biology are not functioning the way they're supposed to be. And it's the biology that is the life of the soil. So if we as human beings don't have oxygen, we suffer. But we don't pay any attention to the biology in the soil if it's suffering.
Now, I never hear any of the big companies talking about air or oxygen. I don't hear the chemical companies talking about it. I don't hear the genetic modification seed companies talking about it. And I don't hear the big fertilizer companies talking about it. Why would you bring it up? Because aren't they going to bring us the best, greatest, most fantastic stuff?
We want them to, and I think, but I think when you take a look at it is, and I hate to say this, but sometimes it just becomes a marketing issue. We want to take a look at, what is the best for us, whether us is a company, whether us is a farmer. And one of the things that we want to do through our company is not just be reactive. We don't want to just put a Band-Aid on a problem, but we want to find out what that problem is, what's causing it, fix the problem.
So rather than just reacting to a symptom with the Band-Aid, you're actually going to correct the cause.
Exactly.
What is that cause? Is there a cause that affects a lot of different symptoms, problems?
When we look at aerobic, and we talked about oxygen being a really, really important part, I have only found one really, really effective way of creating that aerobic zone from a I'll call it a semi-permanent point of view, and that's to add the calcium back into the soil. Calcium structures the soil. It just opens it up and creates that environment for everything else to work the way it was intended to work.
So a ton of limestone, or a ton of gypsum, or a ton of dolomite, or
that's the concept. There's some logistical problems that we've got with putting a spreader on the back of a Super Bee and running across the field. So we found a product, GSR Calcium. We've worked with it. I've worked with it for 12 years now, I guess. And the concept was a little bit freaky because we're not using a lot of it. But again, when the theory turned into reality, it goes, wow, there's something behind this.
Now, when you say a freaky concept,
we're putting grams per acre on.
Grams
per acre.
Grams of calcium per acre.
Yes.
Lauren, you've been farming a long time.
Yeah, I know.
What's grams going to do? You're looking at tons and tons of soil, and you're going to sprinkle a few grams of something?
That's why that first year that I applied it, I had actually thought I had lost my mind.
Yeah.
And
rightfully so.
We left a check strip, and I've got pictures of this where we came back the following spring. So we had applied it end of October, come back around the third week of April, and when one side looked like potting soil and the other side looked like plasticine. And these are 10 or 12 feet apart.
Potting soil to what?
Plasticine.
With grams.
Grams. That's when I got excited. Because even though I couldn't explain it, it was working. And the reality is that's what we want. We want something that works. And it's just been a moving forward ever since then.
So you used it in your own farming operation as a customer. You saw what it did for your ground, and you want to help more people.
I can't not. I can't not. I mean, who I am as an individual is to relate my experience with those around me. Some people don't believe me, that's fine. But there are others that have benefited from my experience. And so it's become a passion, and yeah, that's the direction that we're going now.
So with this grams of calcium starting to create potting soil, what did that show in the crop?
The theory at the beginning had said that once we get our quality of our crops up, we measure that with Brix, and we haven't talked about measurement of the sugar in the plant. Once we get our Brix up, things like diseases, insect pressures, those kinds of things will go away. And so
The theory.
Okay. And so my thought was, okay, that's great. We will see that happen at some point. We've seen our disease pressure go right down in the first year. So one of the big things for us, we grow a lot of canola. One of the big things for us was Sclerotinia. And I like to think that we're probably from an area of the country we developed the spray for Sclerotinia long before there was things like high clearance sprayers and so on and so forth. And the first year that we were on the program, we were seeing a Brix of 18 in our canola. Year one.
Did you check it before that?
No, but I had checked other crops that weren't on the program.
Yeah.
And we were a minimum of 10 points difference.
10 points. So if you're at 19, you're talking almost double
Yes.
in 1 year.
And we were seeing Sclerotinia not be an issue.
Coincidence?
Probably not.
Are the results with grams of calcium repeatable?
We've seen it ever since. We've seen that entire thing. I had the opportunity to move from a customer into part-time working with the company as a rep. I've had customers that have had insect pressures, that, army worms, that kind of stuff, that have gone around their fields. Those are cool things to see. And again, theory into reality.
So grams of calcium, what does it do?
What it does is it triggers a release of calcium in the soil, from the calcium that's in the soil. The energy release from this small amount that we're putting on is creating vast more available in the soil for the plant to take up.
There's a lot of talk about climate change, global warming. Obviously, there's a lot of CO2 in the air. Can that be something that can help farmers?
I think agriculture is the solution to a lot of these things. The question that I've always had is, plants take CO2 in, release oxygen. Which plants take in more CO2? The healthier plants or the weaker plants? And so if we're growing a plant that's got a Brix of 8 versus a Brix of 18, is that taking in more CO2?
A little more heavy breathing? Yeah. But to sequester this carbon that has been monitored and measured in the air, that atmospheric air has to get
Yes.
into the soil.
Yes.
And you're attributing the GSR calcium for the success of opening that soil.
It's the air in the soil. To successfully do it, that's the only thing that we found that's easily applied, cost efficient, and effective. So if we're going to talk about the carbon sequestration, getting the oxygen in the soil is step one. getting the carbon cycle going in the plants is part of it. Getting the biology going is part of it. It all works together. Plants take some of the sugar, put it out into the root system. That's carbon that they're putting out into the root system.
So your aerobic microbes in the soil, they breathe in air just like we do, and they give off carbon dioxide.
Yes.
There's already carbon dioxide in the air. Isn't that going to cause more ruckus?
No, because the plant is taking that in. Again, is cycling it.
Ah, plant available. Now what about the atmospheric nitrogen that makes up 78% of what we breathe?
Again, if the soil can breathe, it can grab some of that. There's microbes in the soil that can take and make some of that available to the plant. It's a cycle that has been created a long, long time ago that, in the last 100 years we've gone away from.
Have you noticed with the Back to the Roots program a reduction in purchased nitrogen?
Yes, we have seen that. Not necessarily year one, but we've seen over time where we've been able to reduce our inputs from the purchased nitrogen portion. Yeah.
So commercially applied nitrogen that almost every grower is strongly dependent on, that has been reduced out of your inventory and out of your input budget.
Keeping yields very, very similar.
So if you cut back on nitrogen, how do you grow a crop? Because you have to have nitrogen to grow a crop.
We've been talking about the microbes in the soil. They're a key part of this, and they need to have the oxygen to do it. So it's a cycle that is supposed to be working in the soil.
So the nitrogen and carbon dioxide in the air, well, this kind of makes sense. A microbe breathes in air, nitrogen, CO2, and that microbe has to have carbon dioxide in order to form carbon dioxide, and that's what the plant lives off, and so you now have an ecosystem going.
And one of its functions is to die. And as it dies, as these microbes die, that all becomes plant available.
So a dead microbe that has maybe grabbed some available calcium and phosphorus and carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and boron and zinc and iron and copper and molybdenum is a microscopic, very small buffet of nutrients.
Exactly.
That, would it be fair to say, is pure adrenaline plant food?
So my question is, do we want to be encouraging this or discouraging this?
There's a lot of companies that do not like what you're doing, because when you get the ecosystem, when you get the life, when you get the air into the soil, farmers buy less inputs. Is that really the North American way?
From a reality point, yes. From a marketing point, yes. From an economic standpoint, not so much.
So Back to Your Roots has a different approach. Rather than just selling your customers something to get them through the year and to get some kind of a crop, you're actually providing a program that creates healthier soil.
Yes.
But these people are probably going to buy less from you down the road.
Good.
You're okay?
We're okay with that because
That
they got
is-
lots of neighbors.
Okay. So a happy customer.
It's the way it's supposed to be. We work in all segments. We work in conventional. We work in organic. It doesn't matter. A system of production does not create quality. It's what you do in those systems.
Say that again.
A system of production
Uh-huh.
does not guarantee quality.
That's a great statement. Can we use that?
Go ahead. It's the reality, though.
So when you
We've seen where people have says from a nutrient standpoint, organic is no better than conventional, and they are technically correct. We've seen that, we've tested that, where there isn't much difference. We can work in both systems to improve that nutrient density.
So the system of production that you're talking about, whether it be chemical, conventional, sustainable, regenerative, organic,
Name it what you want. The principles are all the same in every system.
So on your ground and on your customer's ground, what is your goal? When you're working with your ground and your customers, what's the goal, the end result?
Financial is always a part of it because it makes the world go round.
Yeah.
So everything that we do has to be financially profitable.
For?
The producer.
Okay.
Okay. I know.
Many companies are like, we got to make money first so we can try to sell more stuff. You don't look
But
at it that way.
it's got to be the producer. The producer has to be in control of it. We want to make sure that the food, or one of the goals is to make sure that the food we're producing, whether we're feeding it directly to a consumer or whether we're cycling it through a livestock or of some form, has to be nutrient dense. We want to make sure that the quality of the food is better. And at the end of the day, we want to get our soil in a better shape than what we started with. So we want to make sure that the health of the soil is better. I tell a lot of customers this. Doesn't matter where you farm, how you farm, who you are. Absolutely everything that you do as a producer has to do two things. Number one, it has to be beneficial to your soil microbes. That's the health of the soil. Number two, it has to raise the Brix level of the crop because that's the health of the plant. Your job as a producer now is to analyze that, to monitor it, to figure out whether you need to change, whether you want to change, and how to change.
In your program, you look at getting air into the soil. You look at getting microbes becoming more healthy, eating, breeding, partying, reproducing, dying to become plant food. As this happens, south of you in the great U.S., they talk about super weeds. They talk about chemical resistant weeds. They talk about all these problems, and they said we have to have stronger chemistry. We have to have new chemistry. We have problems going crazy. If you can do what you say with the soil, opening up, getting the microbes happy, what do you see on the herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, pesticides, the killicides, so to speak?
Interesting comment, because when we talk about oxygen in the soil, that's only one component. When we talk about using calcium to create this environment, it gives a secondary effect in that most weeds that we're fighting with and dealing with do not enjoy a calcium-rich environment. So we're seeing weed pressures go down. We're seeing weeds that used to grow 6 feet high and wave at you, now become spindly little plants that really don't want to be there.
Can you give me an example of weeds?
Things like thistles, things like dandelions, things like even some of the softer ones, lamb's quarters, wild oats, wild mustard, all of them.
What about bindweed or morning glory or creeping Charlie or creeping Jenny?
I fortunately don't personally have any experience with it, but my understanding is morning glory and field bindweed are the same weed.
Yeah. You have no personal experience with those weeds on your farm?
On my farm, no.
For 40 years?
No. We don't have kochia either. So it's just not a weed that we've got in our area there. It's a little bit south of us. No. But the bindweed is one that we've seen in areas of southern Saskatchewan that have created some real havoc for some producers. And we're finding some tremendous results using the calcium to knock it back.
Well, now I've heard a lot of well-educated, very intelligent college professors say a weed is just a plant growing out of place.
It's one of the definitions.
What's your definition?
Wheat is a plant that's not grown for food. And so when we take a look at what we're growing for our crops that we're growing versus the weeds, the two enjoy a different environment. One enjoys a calcium-rich environment, one doesn't. And so when you change that environment, it has a definite effect on what wants to be there.
So your food crops enjoy a calcium-rich environment. And when you create that for your food-growing crops, the weeds don't appreciate it?
Do not send you a Christmas card.
They'll kind of check out and say goodnight?
Yeah. So when you got a crop like a volunteer oat plant from last year growing in a field of flax, they're both food crops.
Yeah.
So, it's not, the oats, the volunteer oats is not necessarily a wheat.
Yeah.
So that's where we partition the definitions in what wants to and what doesn't want to.
So kochia, which is an almost universal problem weed,
We've seen tremendous benefits in using the calcium to knock the kochia back.
How can that be?
Look at the environment.
Create the environment and grow what you want rather than what will grow.
Exactly.
Cool. If a Canadian grower watches this and says, wow, that's really interesting, how do they get a hold of you?
We're on the website, backtoyourroots.com, back-to-your-roots.com, or the office number is 306-747-4744. Give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you. We're usually at most of the trade shows. Come look us up, and we'd be happy to come and talk to you.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time,
Thank
Lauren.
you.